in order to ransom the acts, these divine acts that all souls from the beginning to the end of time were to accomplish in heaven and on earth, I had to assimilate myself with their state, whether they were in hell, purgatory, or in heaven. And in assimilating himself to their state in hell, he experienced their state of damnation on the inside. And this subsequently is one of the reasons why he sweated blood in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Hi, thanks for tuning in to Armor of God again. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and hopefully, all of you will learn a lot from this video. Anyway, this is going to be another compilation, and just before we get to the first clip of this compilation, there's a video, a very short video of this lady talking about sex before marriage that I'd like to share here with you. And this basically summarizes the pattern of the dating scenes out there, and this is why it's important to share what the church teaches, especially if they are Catholics. And of course, this will also help in solving another big issue, which is abortion. What to do after all the dating games and sex. Pregnancy comes knocking and one or both do not want the baby and suddenly finding themselves in a tough spot. To get rid of the baby or go ahead with the pregnancy.
I was in a relationship for 6 years. We broke up in June and I've been living a single life in this house by myself. I have 3 dogs now. I personally have the mindset of dating for marriage. I do have friends who I've had conversations with about their experience in dating, and I've talked about my experience in dating with them. And after Christmas, before New Year's, my friends and I were talking about how sex makes dating so much harder because you meet a guy and you're thinking, if we've had a few weeks of talking, phone calls, we establish we both want a relationship, we both want marriage one day, we both want kids one day, we've had all the conversations. If we sleep with them, are they going to think we're easy? Are they going to immediately assume she's probably done this with other guys? Are we thinking that they've done this with other girls? If we wait too long, are they going to think that we don't like them? Are they going to think this girl's not going to have sex with me? I'm going to go have sex with someone else. And, you know, in the moment, you're liking this person and logic goes out the window when sex is on the table. A lot of times we will do that even if we don't want to out of fear. All my friends were talking about how being intimate with somebody can be such a distraction. We've been in situations where we knew we wanted to date a guy. They expressed interest in dating us, becoming exclusive, whatever. And we were intimate with them. And then as time goes on, you start to realize maybe they were saying things they didn't mean. The way that they treated you in the beginning is not how they treat you after you were intimate. Being intimate with somebody is the most vulnerable you can be with another human being emotionally and physically.
I hope you don't mind I share over a minute long of that woman talking about her sex life. And there's a reason for that, and it's related to what Father Carlos Martin said in this clip right here.
You know, like we have kids today that are outright admitting to one another that they use pornography, that they abuse themselves, they masturbate.
Jim, I want to talk about masturbation. Now, I just want you to know that it's a perfectly normal thing, and I have to admit, I did a fair bit of masturbating when I was a little younger.
They have people's perversions are entertained. They entertain the perversion. They are modified by the perversion, and then there's this unhindered, uninhibited aspect of people that is just astounding. I was in a coffee shop the other day and I'm hearing these 2 guys and there's 2 girls with them. They're all college mates and they're just talking about the different sort of sexual things that they do. Here I am, I'm trying to just enjoy my cup of coffee and looking through my emails, and I can't help but hear this. I mean, in our day, nobody talked like this. You wouldn't talk publicly about it, certainly not to a group, and not loud enough that the guy at the next table could hear you. But something's happened. And, you know, in our sexuality, we are being, in our youth, absolutely, are being hooked in to absolute perversion. And that perversion is getting them to make choices that are spiritually and physically dangerous. And the whole thinking of the culture is being warped. You know, God's plan for sexuality Who is teaching these kids in school that plan so that there's at least an alternative, right? So that I don't know if anyone is getting it anymore. I don't know. I just don't know. But you see it everywhere in culture and society, right? That's one of the big ways, dabbling in the occult and sexual sin are the two ways people get demons the most. Sex and sexuality, portholes to the soul, because that's what they are. God created the sexual faculty to be holy, to be the way by which a man and a woman bond, not just at the level of physicality, but at the level of the soul, such that the two become one. And this is why our Lord says, when a man lusts after a woman, he's already committed adultery in his heart. And Paul rails, and he says, look, don't you know that if you're lusting with a prostitute, you've become one with her. You've bonded with her. Right. So this is scriptural. This is part of God's plan. What the warnings are there. Who is heeding this warning enough to be able to proclaim it from the housetops to everyone? Like, hey, look, when you go to pornography, here's the implication. Right now, I have examples of cases where people have picked up demons from some of these perverted actions.
For the next clip, there's something someone asked Father Reehil that I'd like to share here with you. And please, if you have the time, please do check out Battle Ready on Radio Maria. Father Reehil has asked The Exorcist show every Friday, and also if you can support Radio Maria financially, please do so, and you can do it on their website. I am more than happy to spread the word about them, and they're doing a wonderful job. Anyway, here's the question that I talked about earlier.
I am wondering, I had an experience with a Freemason who was cooking for me, and he gave me food, which I ate. And then a second time he came, I had like an epiphany that I better not eat any more of that food. And I refused him ever again to be present, to come. I said, you don't have to come back anymore. I'm not going to eat that. Then I was reading about food that could be cursed. So I wondered, I know we say that prayers to bless our food, but also I wanted to know how we could maybe purify the food in every way so that if there were curses or any poisons of any sort. And I thought of St. Benedict, how he prayed over his food. So would you have a suggestion for that or some insights for me?
Yeah, well, the Masons, yes, the curses associated with the Masons are through the lineage of the Masons. They're not putting curses on non-Masons. The curse happens when they go against the Masons or they try to leave the Masons or they don't follow through with something they were supposed to do. Then all those curses activate within the family line. So they're not running around trying to curse other people's food. I mean, I think most of these guys probably don't even know that they've taken these oaths and that they're real. So, but if there was a witch would be someone that is trying to curse food or put spells on a drink or something. So you want to be sure that your food, I started doing this during COVID. Whenever I bring groceries into the house, I would just say in the name of Jesus, I bind all spirits of death and disease off of all this food in the name of Jesus Christ be gone. And then I would bless all the food before I even unpacked it. And then I felt like it was good. But then as you individually eat things one by one, you do the blessing of grace.
And I've always learned something whenever these exorcists share their experience and stories from the cases they handled before. There's this one where Father Martins talked about an 8th grader whose reflection did not appear in the mirror or the TV screen.
The devil at a certain point, so to understand the devil, you have to remember that he's like the addict on steroids. Because at the fall of the devil and his fallen angels, their angelic nature became warped, right? Our human nature became warped at our fall. But theirs is so much more because their fall was so much higher and greater. So what you have is in the devil and in his fallen angels, you have this craving that is insatiable. And so they set about to attack somebody. And oftentimes the only way that I'm able to discover their presence or another exorcist is they make a mistake. They can't help themselves but hit the person at the wrong time. They leave a calling card whereby, holy smokes, like where did that come from? I'm like, there was an 8th grader whose reflection would not appear in the mirror and on any TV screen. I mean, there was a way in which the devil prided himself in manipulating light so that her reflection wouldn't appear. Well, if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have even known that there was a problem, because she was a diagnosed case of schizophrenia. And so we would have all just attributed all of this to the mental illness, the fact that she's describing what's happening. We would have just, this person is ill. We just need to take her to a doctor. But all of a sudden, we started seeing this stuff. And this is the devil. It's his own hubris and pride, where, look what I can do. I'm going to rub her out. And all of a sudden you look at that. Well, he just did the stupidest thing that he could, but this is the devil. He leaves a calling card. So if we're not taking a sober look at him and his activity, we can miss a fundamental detail like this.
And I'm not sure when it was, but one of you asked about it in the comments before, what this caller asked in this clip between him and Father Reehil here. Check this out.
I have a question. I don't understand how the devil can influence your dreams to give you nightmares. You know, if he can't read our thoughts, I don't understand how he can kind of, I'll say, attack you when you're sleeping. I mean, I understand it's a pretty vulnerable time, but I don't understand that process. Would you be able to explain that?
Yeah, these are pure spirits. They are incredibly powerful and incredibly brilliant. And when they fell, they retained their power and their brilliance. And one of the things they can do is they can place thoughts in our mind. They can't determine what we're thinking, but they can push thoughts into your mind. This is temptation. It happens all day long. They can do it when you're awake, and they can do it when you're asleep. And even when you're asleep, they can even inflame those to actually have your bodily passions have a reaction, even though you're unconscious. And then when you wake up, that's why you're all riled up. It's like you feel like you were living it. They can do that, but they can also be blocked. So if you pray Psalm 91 before you go to bed, and if you sprinkle your room with holy water, I would say you're probably not going to have those problems.
And just another one from Father Carlos Martins here. I've always learned a lot from listening to him. And so here he is commenting on what happened to Tucker Carlson before.
Tucker Carlson wakes up. He's been attacked through the night. It's a diabolical attack. How do we know this? Because these claw marks, they were not self-inflicted. They weren't self-inflicted because they don't even match the size of his hands and so on and so forth. Okay. Couldn't have been anyone else in the room because he never woke up during it. And they never woke up. So he had 4 dogs and his wife sleeping in the room, and he had said that they're all light sleepers. So if someone else was in the room or one of them moved, there would have been a reaction by the others. Okay. Now, how do you make sense of this? So what he described is a vexation, which is level 2 of a demonic attack. So the first basic level that the devil attacks is through temptation. And all of us are subject to temptation, right? Bar none. Even our Lord and our Lady were. So that's ordinary diabolical activity, temptation. Then we begin the realm of extraordinary diabolical, a vexation, right? And it can take 2 forms. A physical form, a blow, a scratch, like a claw mark, or a coffee cup goes zinging past your face in the room, or it doesn't have to be even quite as dramatic as that, but a couple of paintings fall in your house. The fridge tips over kind of thing, and what in heaven's name could explain it? But they're brief, momentary physical attacks. They could also be a mental attack in the sense that all of a sudden you scream at your business partner and you have no idea where that came from, right? Like you weren't angry at him. You didn't have a bad day, but all of a sudden you mistreated somebody, and you, even to yourself, you say, what in heaven's name did I? That's a vexation. Then we have house infestation, where you have a collection of vexations happening, physical vexation in a home. Or you can have an oppression, where it's a collection of mental vexations coming at you, where like the devil has now gotten into your head. You're not perceiving reality right, nor are you acting right. So the question is, like Tucker Carlson has noted this at the level of vexation. I mean, it's not his word, but this is what I'm calling it. And he had the courage and the bravery to go into national news and say this. Like, I mean, this became a worldwide issue. That took a lot of bravery, because that man is a highly intelligent man, very rational. I mean, he thinks lightning fast on his feet, right? I mean, he would be outstanding as a prosecutor. And so he's come out and said, look, the devil is real, and he came at me, and I didn't know how to handle it. And I didn't know. I went to my assistant, who was an evangelical, the closest thing to a Christian that I had in my life. And I, like, what just happened here? And she directed him, and he went and sought out, well, he picked up the Bible. For a year and a half, he was reading the Bible, right? So that was exactly the response that he should. He recognized it as a spiritual evil, and he tried to combat it with spiritual good. And my hope for his sake, he keeps going down that path, right? To nip the attack in the bud. The question that one ought to ask is there anything I'm doing that could bring this about? Is there anyone in my house that could be bringing this about? Is there anything in my family line that could bring this about? But the question is, do I have enough of God in my life to prevent this from going any further? Because if not, I better get God in my life real fast. Am I in the state of grace? Am I receiving the sacraments, right? The 7 sacraments are these 7 ways Jesus Christ left to heal the world, right? The sacraments convey the presence of God in you, not around you, in you. And that's caustic and toxic to the devil. Do I have enough of God in me to withstand an attack? So, you know, I commend Tucker Carlson for the bravery it took to do that, because in so doing this, he is identifying his vulnerability. And you can see he didn't know what in heaven's name to do, right? For a Tucker Carlson to say that is an act of vulnerability.
The following 2 clips in this compilation will be of Father Joseph Iannuzzi, and the first of the 2 will be about animals. I know this is one of the most popular questions that people ask in the comments before, and also one of the most controversial, only because there's different answer to the question, but that's because there's no official church teaching to the whole thing. In any case, I'm still going to share this with you here.
Someone asked me once, Father, do animals go to heaven or to hell or to purgatory? Now, there's no official teaching of the church on this, but there is a teaching from the church. It's not magisterial, but it's from the writings of some doctors and fathers. And that is that, and I'll mention one, Thomas Aquinas, a 13th century theologian, who taught that only rational creatures go on to their eternal reward. I'm paraphrasing his words, but that's in essence his teaching. However, his contemporary Bonaventure stated that everything we experience in this life, we will experience in the next and even more. Does that not include animals? Now, it is my theological opinion, not church teaching, that there are animals in the next life. The question is, where? Remember, heaven is not one static place. It's not one big auditorium. Heaven is a series of dimensions, of spiritual realities and places that encompass the whole cosmos and beyond. There's no limit to heaven. It goes on for eternity. But there's the terrestrial paradise known as Eden that still exists. And that is part of heaven. It's the material component, you may say, to heaven. And there are probably other material components to heaven as well. We know that Jesus' body was physically taken up, as well as Mary's, as well as Enoch's, Elijah, right? So where are they, these bodies? There must be a physical modality of existence in that immaterial place we call the heavens, where these bodies are, as well as where the animals are that are in Eden. So when Adam and Eve were cast out of Eden, God placed a cherub, angel, with a flaming sword guarding its entrance, which means it's still there, and he's still guarding it. And if you read the approved writings of the mystic and Catherine Emmerich, she talks in detail about Eden, and that it still exists with animals still there. Also, in Revelation, Jesus comes down as the King of Kings and Lords of Lords on a white horse. Where did the horse come from? So you see, there are reasons to believe that there are animals in the next life. The question is, do they go from this life to the next, or are the animals there that don't come from the earth but from some other place, or were created in some other place, like Eden? That remains open to debate.
I made a post on Community Post of Father Iannuzzi explaining what Jesus meant by saying this in Matthew 16, where he said, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." And someone commented and interpreting the whole thing based on his own understanding. So I suppose it's a good idea to share the audio format of Father Iannuzzi explaining it here in this compilation.
In Matthew 16, Jesus said, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." What does that mean? The gates of hell will not prevail against it. It means that the church will never deviate from the truth. Never. No matter what you do, the church won't deviate from the truth. That's a guarantee given by Christ. Will individuals in the church deviate? Of course, they have and they will. Whether they be lay people or priests or bishops, they fall into schism, into excommunication. This has happened and it will happen. But this is not the church. These are individuals within the church. There's a difference. The church is made up of a chain of command and the members of the mystical body of Christ, which is all the baptized that only God knows, by baptism, blood, or desire. Lumen Gentium, Article 16 states that all the baptized in Christ are made so by either sacrament, blood, or desire. This constitutes all those who are members of the church, including the priests, the religious, and the laity. Now, in addition to all the laity, we have the hierarchy, priests, and depending upon the religious, some yes, some no. According to the church's branches of theology and its compartmentalization of lay and cleric, nuns are not clergy. Okay, they're laity. Nuns are laity. Brothers, religious brothers, are laity. Priests are clergy. Bishops are clergy. The Pope is clergy. He's a bishop. And deacons are clergy. But religious brothers, religious sisters, that is nuns, active cloistered, they're all laity. And then you have the consecrated laity, and then you have the married laity. Then you have the single laity. So we have these two divisions in the church. They're united but distinct, cleric and lay. Okay? This makes up the entire church. If one lay member or one religious member or one clerical member severs him or herself from the church, it doesn't mean the church has fallen into schism or the gates of hell have prevailed against it. It means that one of the members or a few have done so through sects, through movements disobedient to the magisterium and the Pope. But being united with the church means what? Being united with the Supreme Pontiff first and foremost. Why? Because in Matthew 16, Jesus did not say, "Upon this rock Andrew, upon this rock Philip, upon this rock John, upon this rock Matthew I will build my church." He said, "Upon this rock Peter." One of the 12 was separated from them and chosen to be the rock. It's not the person of Saint Peter. It is the office of the papacy. So every pope is Peter. Every validly elected pope is Peter. And once we go against the pope's teachings on matters of morals and faith, church discipline, church governance, we are now in schism. That's how the Catechism defines schism. Opposing the Petrine authority.
And as for the final clip here, I'd like to share this from my interview with Father Francis, where he explained how he as an exorcist diagnosed the difference between something that is caused by something diabolical presence or something that is caused by psychological issues.
Broad picture on how to diagnose the difference between something that is caused by diabolical presence or action and something that is probably more on the level of psychological or hormonal problems. The diabolical influences can take the form of persistent thoughts. And you just seem to be unable to get away from it. All right. So you want to really understand what the person is going through. You know, are these dreams? Are there other strange phenomena occurring? What is your relationship to the sacraments, is the person a believer? Is the person a non-believer? What's their story? Maybe they had some bad experiences with the church or with their family. What's really going on here? So it takes a lot of patience. But sometimes you do come up with people whose behavior is not really what they want. That they're, and then sometimes you say, okay, well, this is sometimes a psychological problem, or even, psychological is a very broad word. You could be mentally ill. All right. There are forms of schizophrenia where you're hearing voices, things like that. I've known people with schizophrenia who heard animals talking, like they had this idea that I can hear these animals talking, they would tell me, or things like that, or they have terrible dreams, or they become paranoid, that there's no reason to feel paranoid, but they get there. Or then there are people with bipolar syndrome, where they're 1 minute they're out to conquer the world, and then a few months later they're just crashing, into really profound and terrible depression, things like that. So there are many forms of mental illness. There's autism also, which is a great mystery. Why are so many children autistic, right? And some of the things about autism seem to have to do with the two different sides of the brain, and that maybe the left side of the brain is too activated and the right is not enough activated. So there are many things that one has to take into consideration. People would come here and, at first, when you start out with this ministry, there's a certain kind of, awe and even fear as you see people go into these trance states and then begin to behave very violently, and you have to hold them down, 3, 4, 5 people, and all kinds of phenomena begin to manifest. But it's also interesting that after you've prayed, maybe for 4, 5, 6 hours over this person, the priest, can be pretty tired after all of that, but the person gets up and it's as if nothing happened. All right. So this person was in some other state, all right, while there was this manifestation of another presence, of an alien will, all right, that was trying to destroy this person. And through prayer, we're able to move that entity away, and the person gets up on their feet, and they're, at least for a little while, they're fine. And sometimes you have to do this over a period of months with the person. But it is interesting how they get up on their feet and they walk out of the sacristy and they're just fine, So you see that and you say, there's got to be something going on here. This is not just mental illness. This is not just somebody's unbalanced hormones. There's something else going on here. So that's why we talk about the ministry of exorcism and why there's a ritual for doing exorcisms. We have the ritual book, and then the approach has to be very, very pastoral and gentle, because you're guiding a human being through a terrible experience, But in some cases, as we know from the lives of the saints, like Saint Pio, Saint Gemma Galgani, and some of the others, that they went through these diabolical vexations as part of the process of transformation, so that they were transformed into saints through that kind of suffering. All right. So if you're working with somebody who's going through this, you have to be aware that maybe this person is called to a very high level of holiness. So I really need to treat this person with immense respect. So that's why I also started, not only doing the prayers with these people that presented themselves, but I tried to do catechetical teaching. I would try to explain things to them, show them a little bit of a picture of the spiritual life and where they might be going and how they might really develop. So in other words, it's not just a matter of getting rid of the devil. It's really a question of you being the saint that God wanted to make you, you know? And this particular spiritual illness is the way by which you're going to be overcoming some obstacles that you couldn't overcome in any other way. And suddenly, then there's a purpose to it. All right, there's a horizon that is really, I think very helpful for the person going through it. You say, oh, okay, so this is how something's going to change in me. And so it's because it's not like some of the exorcists would go around saying, well, what sin did you commit, that was so bad that, you became possessed by the devil? But that's not really the right question to ask, Some of these people are coming from really bad backgrounds and bad neighborhoods and really terrible family situations. There's no doubt about it. But very often they're not really committing major sins. I mean, these are not people, committing abortion, let's say, or murder or whatever. I mean, they're very often very, very weak people. Okay, people with a lot of might say psychological gaps, in their life, and they're in a situation which is sometimes unbearable, and yet they're suffering, and as they develop through exorcism and prayer, they become stronger. They become stronger. They begin to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and so you see this kind of change happening. St. Pio wrote to a number of people. They weren't possessed by the devil, but they started out as very psychologically weak and prone to giving up. There was what was her name? Maria Gargani. She was a teacher, and she was constantly being belittled by non-believing colleagues, and she just wanted to give up. And Padre Pio said, no, you're not going to give up. Don't give up. Don't flee the field of battle, but continue fighting. And little by little, with his encouragement, she became a very courageous woman who founded a religious order of nuns who continue to this day to work with young women and accompany them in the stages of life. So, I mean, and of course, he was great with reading people's hearts and seeing, what God was calling them to, right? The real vocation, not the vocation of complaining and giving up and, and saying, I can't do it. I'm not up to it. I'm not so great. No, he said, wait a minute now. No, that's not coming from God. That's coming from the other side. All right. You gotta stand up on your own 2 feet and work in the mission that God's giving you. So those stories are really important, because this way also we don't forget that even the person who is traumatized and tormented by a demon or more than one demon, also has a destiny to holiness, is being called to holiness. And so the work that we do with people is to help them realize the vocation that God has given them, which goes far beyond the pains and the perplexity of being possessed or traumatized by demons. Okay, it's like that's one step on the journey, but it's not the real journey. It's not the whole story, And so anyway, the rite of exorcism for me is a way that the church has to help people who are, engaged in that kind of spiritual combat, so that when they come out the other side, they are closer to the holiness that God intended for them. All right. And I hope that's helpful.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. I always try to add varieties into the compilation, so doing it this way, all of you get to listen to from different priests, talking and teaching and sharing. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. I know there are a lot of weaknesses in the delivery, but still, I hope all of you are learning from watching these videos. And that's the most important thing to me. Anyway, thanks again for watching and may God bless you.